You work all week. You wake up early even when you're exhausted. You answer emails that don't really matter to you. You sit in traffic, deal with difficult customers, stressful meetings, deadlines, and constant pressure just to make it through another month. Every paycheck comes in and somehow disappears almost immediately. Rent, bills, subscriptions, debt payments, food, gas, unexpected expenses. And at the end of the month, you look at your bank account wondering the same thing. How am I working this hard and still not getting ahead? You're not completely broke. You survive. Maybe you even save a little sometimes. But deep down, you still feel financially stuck. Like no matter how hard you work, life keeps getting more expensive faster than you can keep up. And here's the scary part. From the outside, your life probably looks responsible. You have a job. You pay your bills on time. Maybe you avoid unnecessary risks. Maybe you were told this is exactly what successful adults are supposed to do. But here's the thing. Most people aren't trapped financially because they're lazy. They're trapped because they followed a system built to create workers and consumers, not owners. And without realizing it, the habits you think are helping you survive may actually be making someone else rich. My name is Demas, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you're someone who feels stuck financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, this video isn't about blaming rich people, and it's not one of those become a millionaire overnight motivational speeches either. This is about understanding why so many hardworking people still feel financially trapped even when they're doing everything society told them to do. You probably grew up hearing the same advice everyone else did. Go to school, get a stable job, work hard, save money, avoid risk. And honestly, that advice used to work a lot better than it does today. But the world changed. Housing became more expensive. Education became more expensive. Healthcare became more expensive. Even groceries feel expensive now. Meanwhile, wages haven't kept up at the same pace. So now millions of people are working harder than ever while feeling financially weaker every single year. Here's what most people don't realize. There's a massive difference between earning money and building wealth. Most people only learn how to survive financially. Very few people ever learn how the system actually works. Here's what most people don't realize. Modern society is built around consumption. The economy grows when people keep spending money constantly. That means businesses, apps, advertisers, and even social media platforms are all competing for one thing every single day. Your attention, because attention eventually becomes spending. Think about how normal debt and monthly payments have become. People rarely ask, "Can I actually afford this?" anymore. Instead, they ask, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" And that changes everything. A $200 phone suddenly feels cheap when it's split into monthly installments. A luxury car feels reasonable because the payment fits into your paycheck. Expensive lifestyles become psychologically easier to justify when the real cost is hidden behind subscriptions and financing. But over time, something dangerous happens. People slowly build lives where their income is already spent before they even receive it. Look, the system loves consumers because consumers create profit. The more you buy, the more someone else earns. But wealthy people usually focus on something completely different. Ownership. Ownership of assets. Ownership of investments. Ownership of businesses. That's the difference most people never notice. Now let's break this down with real numbers because this is where things start getting uncomfortable. Imagine two people making exactly the same income, $70,000 per year. On paper, they look identical financially, but their decisions create completely different futures. Person A decides to reward themselves for working hard. They finance a brand new car with a $700 monthly payment. They upgrade their apartment, buy the newest phone every year, and spend most of their raises improving their lifestyle. From the outside, they look successful, but at the end of every month, almost nothing is left. Now, person B makes one small change. Instead of buying the expensive car, they buy a reliable used car and invest the difference, around $500 every month, into an index fund averaging roughly 8% annually over time. That doesn't sound life-changing at first, but after 20 years, that single decision could grow into nearly $300,000. From one habit shift, this is where it gets really interesting. Wealth is often less about how much money you make and more about where your money flows every month. Small financial decisions repeated consistently become massive outcomes over time. Money is emotional, way more emotional than most people are willing to admit. People like to think financial decisions are logical, but most of the time they're driven by feelings, habits, fear, stress, and social pressure. That's why someone can fully understand budgeting and still overspend emotionally after a bad day. Here's the thing. Your brain is constantly fighting between short-term pleasure and long-term security. Psychologists call this instant gratification. Buying something today gives your brain an immediate dopamine hit. It feels rewarding right now. But investing money for retirement 30 years away? That feels distant and emotionally invisible. And companies understand this perfectly. That's why apps are designed to keep you scrolling. Why online shopping feels addictive. Why advertisements constantly sell lifestyles instead of products. Then there's something called loss aversion. People fear losing money more than they enjoy gaining it. So many people avoid investing because temporary market drops feel painful emotionally, even if long-term investing historically builds wealth over time. Meanwhile, inflation quietly reduces the value of their savings every single year, and most people don't even notice it happening. Now let's talk about debt, because this is one of the biggest financial traps people quietly fall into. Here's the thing. Debt itself is not always bad. Wealthy people use debt all the time. Businesses use debt. Investors use debt. Real estate investors especially understand how to use borrowed money strategically. But there's a massive difference between productive debt and consumptive debt. Productive debt helps create future income or increases asset value over time. Consumptive debt finances lifestyle, and most people are using future income to pay for present emotions. That's where the problem begins. Credit cards make spending feel almost invisible psychologically. Swiping a card doesn't trigger the same emotional pain as handing over physical cash, so people spend more than they realize, little by little, until the balance becomes overwhelming. Then interest starts working against them instead of for them. A person carrying $10,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest can spend years trapped just trying to catch up. Meanwhile, they're stressed, exhausted, and confused why financial progress feels impossible. This is why high-interest debt quietly destroys wealth-building momentum before most people even get started. Wealthy people understand something most people completely underestimate. Time is more powerful than intensity. Most people think building wealth requires some massive breakthrough. A huge salary, a lucky investment, a successful business, something dramatic. But in reality, wealth is often built slowly, quietly, and consistently over long periods of time. This is where compound growth becomes almost unbelievable. Imagine someone invests just $400 every month starting at age 25. They consistently invest into simple long-term assets averaging around 8% annually. At first, the growth feels small. After a few years, it barely looks exciting. And that's exactly why most people quit too early. But over decades, compounding starts accelerating aggressively. The money begins generating its own growth. Then that growth starts generating even more growth. Eventually, the numbers become life-changing. Not because the person was a financial genius, but because they gave time a chance to work. Here's what most people don't realize. Wealthy people often spend years buying assets first and luxury later. Average people often buy luxury first and hope wealth comes later. That single difference completely changes their future. So how do you actually escape this cycle? Because understanding the problem is important, but changing your behavior is what actually changes your future. First, you need brutal financial awareness. Not estimates, not guesses. Real numbers. Most people have no idea how much money quietly disappears every month through subscriptions, impulse purchases, food delivery, convenience spending, and emotional shopping. Small expenses don't seem dangerous individually, but repeated over years, they become massive leaks in your financial life. Second, build an emergency fund. This sounds boring, but financial stability changes your psychology completely. When you have savings, you make calmer decisions. You're less desperate, less emotional, less likely to rely on debt during emergencies. Third, eliminate high-interest debt aggressively. A 20% credit card interest rate can destroy financial progress faster than most investments can realistically grow. Paying off destructive debt is sometimes the best guaranteed return available. Then start investing consistently, not emotionally, not based on headlines, consistently. And finally, focus on increasing your income strategically. Learn valuable skills, negotiate better opportunities, build additional income sources carefully over time. Because there's a limit to how much you can cut, but income potential can continue growing for decades. Look, the system was never designed to automatically make you wealthy. It was designed to keep money moving. That's how modern economies function. People work, spend, borrow, repeat, and as long as that cycle continues, businesses grow, banks profit, and consumption keeps the system alive. And if nobody ever teaches you how money actually works, you naturally become trapped inside that cycle without even realizing it. That doesn't mean the system is evil, but it does mean financial freedom requires awareness. Because the people quietly building wealth usually think differently. They focus on ownership instead of appearances, assets instead of status, long-term freedom instead of short-term validation. And honestly, that's encouraging. Because building wealth is usually less about being perfect and more about being consistent. Small decisions repeated over years completely change your future. Every dollar you spend is doing one of two things: buying temporary pleasure or building future freedom. And once you truly understand that, your entire relationship with money starts changing. You stop trying to look rich. You start trying to become financially independent. And that mindset shift alone can change the direction of your entire life forever.